Happy Monday. Welcome into the San Francisco 49ers Report right here on Chat Sports. I'm Chase Sr. We're bringing you this show because San Francisco making a roster move at that wide receiver position as the Niners have signed a former second-round pick in Anthony Miller. A full breakdown, what to expect from him, and why the Niners made this move coming up. First, though, make sure you subscribe to the show. Turn on those notifications. First of all, because anytime breaking news like this happens, we have you covered, and we're going to dissect it all. Secondly, though, we're going to be going live here on the 49ers Report later on today, 5 o'clock Eastern, 2 o'clock Pacific. So much to talk about. A new report as far as the Nick Bosa situation goes. You don't want to miss it. So let's talk about Anthony Miller here. In light of Danny Gray's shoulder injury, which he suffered in that preseason game against the Broncos over the weekend, it was an AC joint sprain in his shoulder. That's good news because it is not a broken collarbone, as Kyle Shanahan and San Francisco did fear after that game. But this move tells me they expect Danny Gray to be out a little while. And Danny Gray is known as the speed element on this Niners offense. So San Francisco basically balancing things out, losing Danny Gray, but signing Anthony Miller because he's known to be a speedster. 28 years old, 5'11", so he doesn't tower over people at that wide receiver spot. He played his college football at Memphis. He was a 2018 second-round pick by the Chicago Bears out of Memphis. And when he was playing in the American Athletic Conference, this guy put up absolutely stupid numbers. That's why he shot up draft boards, and that's why he was an early second-round pick in that 50 range. When he was at Memphis, take a look at what he was able to do for the Tigers. The last 2 years that he played collegiate football, 95 catches for more than 1,400 yards and 14 touchdowns in his second year. He came out after year 3 for context. Third year, 96 grabs, almost 1,500 yards, 18 touchdowns, and in his final season at Memphis, he was a consensus All-American. Now, here's the issue with Anthony Miller, and we're going to come to probably find out that drop issues, sloppy route running is why he hasn't been able to cut out a continuous, successful, and consistent NFL career. Kind of bloomed early, and then after that, he's really dropping off. That production that he displayed, put on tape at Memphis, hasn't translated to the NFL level. He was with the Chicago Bears from 2018 to 2020. When you were let go that early as a second-round pick, it goes to show you he fell out of favor for Matt Nagy and that organization. He goes to the Houston Texans in 2021, only spends one season there, fell out of favor once again. Then he's with the Pittsburgh Steelers in 2021 after he was let go by Houston. And in 2022, has not appeared in a regular season game since 2020-21. Last year, he was put on season-ending IR because of a shoulder injury. So what's the issue with Anthony Miller? Because he's had a couple of solid years, at the very least, at the NFL level. He peaked early, became unreliable after that, drop issues, not a good route runner. Also, with that speed, he's a burner. 4.3, 4.4 guy, kind of like Danny Gray. He's not a guy who contributes on special teams. So when you're that fast, and you're a backup wide receiver, and you're a fringe roster type, you have to find a way to make an impact somewhere. And he hasn't been able to do that consistently as a wide receiver. Then the backup plan hasn't been able to do that as a special teamer either. And I talk about him peaking early. As a second-round pick, for him to have 33 catches, 423 yards, and 7 touchdowns with bad quarterback play in what was a pretty lackluster offense, that's pretty good. And then in year 2, 52 catches, 656 yards, and 2 touchdowns. Your first 2 years, those are solid numbers when the surrounding complementary cast wasn't that great in Chicago. But he quickly, as I said, fell out of favor in Chicago, then Houston, than Pittsburgh. But why this is interesting for the Niners in particular here is that he gives you the speed that you lost with Danny Gray. And when you look at this Niners receiver depth chart that we're about to pop up here, San Francisco is clearly set at the top few wide receiver positions. Brandon Ayuk, wide receiver number 1. Deebo Samuel, wide receiver 2. Jawan Jennings, wide receiver 3. Ray McCloud will make this team even with that broken wrist, because if he weren't to make the 53, you put him on IR, his season's over. He'll probably miss the first few weeks of the season, but you could pencil him in to make this team 1 or be wide receiver 4 and contribute on special teams as one of the best returners in the game. Ronnie Bell, in my opinion, has earned a roster spot. He's the next iteration and the next edition of the Yak Bros alongside Ayuk, Deebo Samuel, and George Kittle. His performances so far in the preseason have been so good that not only do I think Ronnie Bell makes this team, he might be too good to not play as a rookie. So let's say that Ronnie Bell is wide receiver 5. Does San Francisco hold on to 6 wide receivers, or do they hold on to 5 wide receivers and put Danny Gray on some type of injured list while holding on to Ronnie Bell? Whether they hold 5 or 6 wide receivers is going to be interesting, and the injury to Danny Gray obviously plays a role in this, but without Danny Gray, you need that speed element on the field, and maybe, he can give you that when we talk about Anthony Miller here. So that's why it's interesting. Is he a candidate to make the 53-man roster? Probably not, but maybe, just because the injury to Gray and what you're losing with the speed elements of the former third-round pick out of SMU, who certainly had an up-and-down career to start here in a year and change for San Francisco. But as always, with the player that has pedigree like Miller, can you bring the most out of him? Can you get him on track? Can you get him to that ascendance, to that trajectory that he was on the first 2 years of his career, where he really did peak the first 2 years of his career before, again, falling out of favor with Chicago and then not being able to crack a roster with Houston, with Pittsburgh, and then not even being on a team up to this point across the NFL. It's a big name, former second-round pick, and anytime you get an athlete like this with the speed to his game who's had some production at the NFL level, crazy production at the University of Memphis, you're intrigued. You'll take a shot on a player like this, especially when you probably know he's not going to make the 53, but bring him in as a camp body to see what he can do. Another reminder, join us live on the San Francisco 49ers Report right here, 5 o'clock Eastern, 2 o'clock Pacific, coming up here in just a few hours. This is why you subscribe. This is why you turn on your notifications. Nobody's bringing in Niners content like this here on YouTube. We try to be the standard here out on these YouTube streets for consistent year-round daily coverage of San Francisco. Salakasin, we'll see you in a few hours. Anthony Miller to the Bay. We'll see what he can do.